What is up, diehards? Wes Monell in the building for AWOL Sports. Drew Lacuesta in the house. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is a 2020 NFL season preview, our projections for every division, first through last with records. When we look at the schedule, if we give one team a win, we cross-reference that by giving the other team a loss. So we keep track here. That's how it should go, and that's how we roll. The NFC North up next. Last year, the Packers and Vikings both won a playoff game. The Bears made it 2 years ago. Detroit gets Matthew Stafford back from injury. Starting with Green Bay, who won the division, they went out and got some contingency plans for Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones. You know, two of their three best offensive players. Hey, it's up in the air if they're going to extend Devontae Adams too. As for now, these are the leaders. They look deep at running back. Maybe a second receiver emerges. Good things are being said about Allen Lazard and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They're pretty good up front with that offensive line. Overall, the offensive stats, they weren't special. Flipping to the defense, the back seven, they're pretty good. I absolutely love the potential of the secondary that's already shown they could be pretty good. The D wasn't great last year overall. What they did do, much like Seattle, was force turnovers. This team wasn't reliable on third downs on either side of the ball. When you do that and you take into account what you were watching last year did not look like a 13-3 team, and they kind of had a big hole in the middle of their defense as it pertained to stopping the run. And look, hats off to Matt LaFleur. It's his first head coaching gig here, and year one was a success to an extent. That extent was making the playoffs. That's what matters, winning games. I think they're kind of burning some bridges, and in the process, before you even move on from some players, your better players, I don't know. It's not that I'm totally out on them. I have them at 9-7, missing the playoffs, but due to a tiebreaker. Drew, I see you also have them at 9-7.
9-7 for me, but they do take over and take the 7th seed. I see a little bit of a downward trend. I do like the team. I do like the roster, but a lot of this draft talk, Aaron Rodgers talk, relationship talk with LaFleur kind of reminds me of that tension year with Mike McCarthy in 2018. I mean, Aaron, we all know, and Aaron knows, he's a big-time talent. But a lot of that stuff does show on the field, and it does show on tape. You know, one of the smartest guys that comes on the Fox show all the time, Greg Cosell, I mean, he looks at endless hours of tape, and he's been doing it for 40 years. One of the things that always struck me when he said he loves Aaron Rodgers, but he chooses to throw receivers open. If he doesn't like the play, it's obvious he's throwing the ball away. The most throwaways out of bounds last year. It's kind of like an attitude thing. A couple of teammates have called him out before. A couple of family members have called him out. I get it. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks ever, and he has the best quarterback rating in the history as well. Great player. I do love Aaron Rodgers. I just feel like sometimes after that being said, maybe it's kind of a hidden message to the coach. You know, maybe he doesn't like the way that this offense is turning. Obviously, they were 13-3 last year, but someone's getting embarrassed on that field versus the Niners, and it's not always LaFleur. Aaron's the one that's out there on the battlefield. So who knows what this offense is going to be like next year, especially after that draft. Like you said, the great thing about their defense is that they create turnovers. So they give the ball back to Aaron, but they are bending quite a bit. They did allow the second highest quarterback rating in the league and the second most passing touchdowns. So it's kind of a give and take. I think they have one of the better secondaries in the league. The main thing is they do get the ball back, so the turnover ratio is huge for teams that can definitely score on offense. Quarterbacks, they liked playing against the Packers because on the stat sheet it showed they had a pretty solid game. Unfortunately, That wasn't always the case. Aaron Rodgers, some say he's declining, but check this out. We know Devontae Adams didn't play the whole year. He missed 4 games. But Aaron Rodgers, in those 4 games, 75% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a 152 rating. That is just insane. During that stint, 34 points at Dallas, 31 points at Kansas City, 23 at home versus Detroit, 42 at home versus Oakland, now Las Vegas. The guy is just ridiculous. Definitely one of the most accurate quarterbacks. Maybe he's a little bit hard to coach. Maybe he's hard to play along with. But, I mean, the guy shows up and he gets it done. So it's just, to me, it's going to be how this relationship works. Obviously it was kind of a punch in the gut, them drafting Jordan Love, another running back, some blocking tight ends, some run stuffing linebackers. Aaron, I guess, might not feel like that's all for him. He might not feel supported. I still think this offense with Aaron Rodgers, obviously, and his greatness is going to put up points. I just don't think it's going to be as strong as last year. They make the playoffs, but something doesn't feel right here.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I'm just not a fan of the early bye. They have one in week 5. Green Bay comes out of their bye to face Tampa Bay, Houston, Minnesota, San Francisco. Whew, that's tough. Not that they're not capable. I'm just not going
Right.
to done it. Um, all right. Let's talk Chicago Bears. To me, they made the obvious choice by starting Mitch Trubisky. I'm not saying I'm all in on Team Trubisky. Hear me out. Benching him week 1 would put a black mark on this regime. It would also be tough to start Nick Foles and possibly bench him to go back to Trubisky. Foles, he's been a journeyman, a starter, and a backup. He can come in as the backup and take the spot. A much better environment for the team if need be. He had to play near perfect, all pro level to get that week 1 nod. That just wasn't going to happen. Moving on, Allen Robinson, we know he's their best offensive player. He's a stud. We love him. The O-line, it went from good a couple years ago to shaky. The running backs, they look good for Matt Nagy's offense. I think David Montgomery could work his way into kind of being their next Matt Forte. We'll see. They're going to need a collective effort from the other guys not named Allen Robinson. I'm talking about Anthony Miller, Ted Ginn, and Jimmy Graham. They're going to need someone to step up in moments throughout the year. It doesn't have to be the same guy to where someone has a breakout year, but they're going to have to figure out someone else because sooner or later, defenses are just going to lock in on A-Rob. And the defense, it's still top tier. I just liked it more under Vic Fangio than Chuck Pagano, to be honest. They have a lot of talent on that side on all levels. They're studs. Khalil Mack, who doesn't love that guy. Their linebackers are so good. I'm a huge Roquan Smith fan. Eddie Jackson, one of my favorite safeties in the game. I like nearly all of their starters, but I landed on 8-8 with this team. They could do better. I see that they could do better. I just don't trust the offense. I look at the defense just a shade down than I used to look at them. Drew, you have them 10-6 winning the North?
I have them winning the North. Yeah, they finish in the playoff number 4 spot. The only reason I do have them with the 10-6 wins is because I believe Foles will start a lot sooner than that cushion that people think they will give Trubisky. I mean, after you kind of explained why they put Trubisky in the starting role, it does make 100% a lot of sense. But I still think eventually it's going to be Nick Foles' team. So after that change, I do see this offense picking up and finally playing to most of the potential that we'll see from Matt Nagy's offense. And maybe they can bring in another quarterback in the future to learn from Foles and be predicated with full off seasons to shine. But as for now, I mean, even last year with Trubisky, 8-8. So they were third in the division. They had 8 wins. I'm only asking for 2 more wins, just like I'm asking from Pittsburgh with Big Ben from 8-8 to 10-6. I don't think that's too much to ask. We got Matt Nagy. I think he's one of the better play callers and better play designers out there. He's a tough-nosed guy. Seems like he's always red-eyed and hungry for battle, and I like that. He's fiery. It seems like this team's on the upward trend too. I like what they're doing. I know you mentioned Vic Fangio, Chuck Pagano. Not that bad. Total was eighth against the pass. Top 10. Fourth lowest points allowed is what I love from this defense. They had 8 games with the first with I'm sorry, they had 8 games with the fourth worst offensive total yards and scoring. So if you can win with that, I'm sure you can win with Nick Foles. Mitch finished fifth lowest in passing yards. I do like what they have as far as weapons. I think when Nick Foles comes and starts for the Bears, I think it'll be enough for Anthony Miller to step up. A-Rob is A-Rob, and I think Tariq Cohen will still have a big role in the pass game in this offense. Tariq Cohen, in the past 3 years, has never finished outside the top 19 fantasy running backs. So they still use him, and I think they're still going to use him this year, especially if they expect Trubisky, at least in his first few games, to stay afloat. I see a lot of checkdowns and easy play calls and play designs from Nagy to use Cohen in the open field. We know he's great, and he can definitely make people miss in open space. So what I like about this schedule too is, yes, it is predicated on a tough schedule from playoff teams from last year, but I do think a lot of these teams are on a slight decline, won't be as tough, like Houston, like the Rams, like Indianapolis. Tampa Bay is great against the run, but who knows with all their new pieces if they're going to come out the gate swinging. New Orleans also could be a very, very questionable team with their age. They added even more veterans on the squad. Malcolm Jenkins, Emmanuel Sanders. If they don't hold up, that could be a winnable game for Chicago too, being so stingy with the points at home. So I like Chicago with Nick Foles, smart guy in the quarterback room, smart guy like Nagy, and a great defense. I think the offense will do just enough to get those extra 2 wins.
So I'm going to go off the top here. I'm looking at their schedule. Uh, they start with Detroit, the Lions, the Giants, and the Falcons. I'm not saying I'm predicting this. I have 1 and 2 in those games, but those are 3 winnable games for them, right?
We don't know. Detroit, they're starting a rookie at the number 1 corner. They have a lot of free agents that they're relying on too. I know they have DeAndre Swift and Stafford is back, but like I said, Chicago plays tough defense. Matt Nagy, the past 2 years he's been in Chicago, the only losing record he has is against Green Bay, 1-3. Against the Vikings, he's undefeated. Against Detroit, he's undefeated. So we don't know if they're going to hit the ground running. I see Minnesota, which is probably coming up next. Minnesota's missing a lot of starters, especially in the secondary. I think it was 7 starters they lost from the defense. How close is that going to gel for them to earn early wins too? At the same time, weapons are minimizing for Cousins. So Diggs gone. Adam Thielen, I think, is turning 32 this year. They have a rookie taking over the slot spot. Is Dalvin Cook going to stay healthy? Is he not? He just got paid. Did he deserve it? Who knows? I'm more on the side of no, but a lot of questions for me for Minnesota, to be honest. So I'm kind of on the other side of those first 3 games.
All right. All right. Just curious because I'm trying to find where you think Trubisky gets benched. Like if they can beat the Lions, Giants, and Falcons, that's 3-0, and then say they lose their next 2 to the Colts and Bucks, they can bounce back against the Panthers, and the Rams is a toss up, and then the Saints might be a loss. But I see a lot of back and forth. Trubisky would really have to bomb. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about it till now, but I don't know when the plug would possibly be pulled here. Conversation for another day coming up soon here. And yeah, overall, looking at the Bears schedule, they do have the rough stretch of the Rams, Saints, Titans, Vikings, and then their bye. Maybe that's the stretch going into that bye. Possible changes. And then you go to Green Bay. And hey, if you're down on the Bears, that might be another L on Green when they play Green Bay out of a bye. That's possibly 5 losses in a row if you take the other side of the equation. So that might be the spot you pull Trubisky. Maybe it's too late. I don't know. Just bringing up something to the forefront. Uh, let's keep it going with the Lions here because I think this division is entirely up for grabs with some teams like the Packers and the Vikings. They're up for regression, I think. The Lions are my pick to win the division. Not by a wide margin, but do a tiebreaker over the Packers. At Matthew Stafford, he's my comeback player of the year. They have 3 running backs split the load, just signing Adrian Peterson, drafted Swift. They still have Kerryon Johnson, capable back. They have a pretty good wide receiver duo. Kenny Galladay, I know he's out week 1, but he'll be back around. Marvin Jones, he's so underappreciated. And they actually still have Danny Amendola in there too in the slot. And I see the most improved player in the league, or at least one of them, TJ Hawkinson at tight end. After this season's all said and done and in the books, I think he might be one of the most improved players. Their O-line, they rank 11th on Pro Football Focus. That plus Matthew Stafford back in the lineup adds a thick silver lining. Matt Patricia, the head coach, he brought on some former Patriot players last offseason and this offseason. Jamie Collins, Trey Flowers, Danny Shelton, Teron Harmon. So he's got some players that are at least familiar with what he's trying to do defensively. They feel like they've addressed corner with free agent Desmond Trufant, first rounder Jeff Okudah. And like Green Bay, I don't love their week 5 bye, but in the end, I do have the Lions at 9-7. You have them a couple games lower at 7-9, I see.
Yeah, same thing here. I do like the trend of the Lions. Um, I'm I'm on board with giving Patricia another year to build this defense up. With all the additions that you mentioned, I think he's getting close, and I think Jeff Okudah is going to be one of those can't miss talents from Ohio State. We know they produce corners like a factory, so I think he's going to be another one in the books. I think they're going to be able to stay in games. Obviously, Stafford wasn't there for the full season last year, so him being back with all these weapons, you know how much I love Galladay. I think Marvin Jones is just as good and still that good. He had a game with 4 touchdowns last year with Galladay on the field, so he can definitely still get it done. Amendola was definitely rostered on a lot of people's fantasy teams for a reason. TJ Hawkinson had that blow up week 1. Then he kind of struggled with the offense, couple of nagging injuries, but man, they have weapons everywhere, especially now if AP is on this team and one of the best running back prospects to come out of the draft in Swift, things are looking up. The only questions I have, they did lose a couple O linemen, and they kind of trying to do it through the draft. One of them they took from the Eagles, Vitae, and the other 2 they took from the draft. So questions on the offensive line. Who knows if they're going to be able to hold up? The only reason I have them not in the playoffs and only at 7 wins is because of the emerging Bears. Minnesota, I have a little bit of a downward trend. Green Bay, I do have a little bit downward trend, but I think still they're competing between these 2 teams. I'm still going to choose Green Bay and Minnesota over a team like Detroit, who still hasn't got their chemistry right. Matt Stafford in the past 4 years is pretty even with all these teams. He's 4-3 against Green Bay. He's 3-4 against Minnesota, and evens it out 3-3 against Chicago. So back and forth there, mostly home game wins, I'm guessing. But I think it's going to take a little bit more on the defensive side, maybe another year of drafting with Patricia's guys. I'm still on board with the Lions. I've always liked Stafford, as you know. Maybe just one more year, though.
I hear it. Okay. All right. And then Minnesota. We both kind of touched upon them. Let's dive into the Vikings. They extend Dalvin Cook at the buzzer before the season begins. There's a lot to like here. They made 2 of the last 3 postseasons, even winning a game last postseason. Top 10 offense and key statistics. I see it. Justin Jefferson, a first-round pick at wide receiver. but I think they're going to miss Stephon Diggs. That's a veteran, savvy, one of the better route runners in the game. I have questions about 30-year-old Adam Thielen getting kicked out of the slot to be wide receiver one for the first time and this late in his career. Defensively, top 10 in fewest points allowed, as well as turnovers. It's going to be tough without Danielle Hunter out of action on IR for the first 3 weeks, but good thing they traded for Yannick Ngakoue. Probably the best DN starters in the game when Hunter comes back. You can make that argument. I'm not sure about their cornerbacks or linebackers against the pass. The safeties are pretty damn good, Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris, but we have seen Harrison Smith prone down the field when he's having to backpedal and cover some tight ends with speed. So, again, I'm just questioning their pass defense. Like you alluded to earlier, a lot of changes on that side of the ball, a lot of new faces. So we actually both have them at 7-9 this season. Look, I'm looking at the first 11 weeks. I know that sounds ridiculous. It's nearly their entire schedule. The first 11 weeks is just challenge after challenge. It possibly a rocky road ahead. That's what I see here. Kind of a lack of consistency. Drew, you have them at 7-9 as well.
I do have them at 7-9. From what I see on the coaching standpoint, I do like Mike Zimmer. I love Gary Kubiak. He's always had a very, very consistent offensive production. But Kevin Stefanski, when he took over, Kevin Stefanski moves to Cleveland. So in 2018, when he took over this offense, it was the fourth worst offense. Week 15, ran by John DeFilippo. They went from 17 points a game to 26 points a game, and they carried that all of last year too. Now, in Cleveland, we bring in Kubiak. Now, obviously, Kubiak has done it a little bit longer, but it's still a new offense. So, what I like is that they still have Cousins. As much as there are some doubters out there, I'm a big fan of Kirk Cousins. I think he always gets it done and always has gotten it done. 69% completion. Last year was number 4 in the league. Quarterback rating was also 4th best in the league. Team great on the ground. Obviously, Dalvin Cook is one of the more talented running backs in the league. But we mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about Detroit. They are having some offensive changes. Thielen now number 1. At his age, he did have an injury last year that sat him out a few games. They lose the field stretcher Diggs. They're going to rely on B.C. Johnson, supposedly, to take the outside spot, and then Justin Jefferson's going to be running the slot. So a little bit less of less weapons there. And then if Thielen goes down or if Dalvin Cook goes down, that's a little bit more pressure than Cousins is not used to. We've already seen how high pressure primetime games have affected his play. It could be that all over again. On the defensive side, 7 starters. 7 starters are gone. A lot of DBs, 4 DBs. There's a lot of rookies starting in that first 3 on the depth chart. They lose Diggs, an 1,100-yard receiver and 6 touchdowns. They try to replace it with a rookie. I think there's just a lot of questions here, again, with an emerging Chicago and a still great Aaron Rodgers-led offense in Green Bay. They don't really have an easy schedule also. Apart from facing Green Bay and Chicago, they're away 5 out of the 8 tough games that I have on their schedule here. At home, they get to host the Titans. They get to host Dallas. They get to host Atlanta. But they're traveling to Indianapolis. They're traveling to Deshaun Watson. They're traveling to Russ Wilson, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. Pretty tough, man, especially with a new secondary like that. Just like you said, Harrison Smith, great at the line of scrimmage, but susceptible to deep coverage and in the red zone. So how are they going to hold up? Too many questions for me, especially with 7 new starters on the defensive side. They could definitely create a pass rush. I don't know if it's going to be enough, though, man. 7-9.
And that'll wrap up the NFC North predictions. We're pretty similar on most of those teams there. And yeah, diehards, thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the division. Who do you think will take it? And see you on the other side.